from the Energy Boutique with your energy forecast for Monday, August 23rd. So the moon is still going to be in Pisces all day. As we know, Mondays are ruled over by the moon, making them very emotional, very sensitive, very heavy, very weighted. And because the moon is in Pisces, we are hypersensitive. We are really gaining a lot of strength and connection through our intuition. We are definitely more willing to escape the roles and responsibilities of our physical lives to live in la la land, where we can dream and imagine the world of possibilities, where we can create a new vision for ourselves, and where we can kind of escape from our physical realities to sort through the emotions and thoughts coming up. We're definitely still in the full moon window, being illuminated to a lot of shadow parts of us that are creeping up for acknowledgement, a lot of releasing and purging points that we have to take advantage of. And of course, we are definitely experiencing what I like to call a lunar hangover. The energy peaked yesterday. We are exhausted. We are sensitive. We are highly emotional. We feel unstable. And because of that, it's a good day to kind of just retreat within yourself. There are 9 different aspects taking place in the cosmos, 6 of them involving the moon in Pisces. And right out of the gate, the moon in Pisces is making an aspect with Saturn, the Lord of Karma. This is really questioning because we've moved into a time and space where we are bossing up. We are advancing. We are evolving. We've seen the growth. We've experienced the growing pains, mind, body, and soul, in order to make that adjustment. And Saturn, of course, wants to remind us of our roles, of our responsibilities, of our commitment to mature, to boss up, to kind of ascend to the next level of authority. And because Saturn is retrograde and in Aquarius, we are definitely retracing, rethinking, revisiting, revising our vision, our dreams, our social responsibility. But the moon in Pisces really doesn't want to deal with that right now, really just doesn't need to be overwhelmed any more than we're actually feeling at this point, and decides to kind of block whatever Mr. Lord of Karma is saying at this point, to kind of retreat and just kind of isolate, to kind of sort out what it is that we're currently thinking and feeling. The moon in Pisces bumps into Pluto, who is also retrograde in Capricorn. This is not going to be the nicest dynamic because Pluto really wants to illuminate for us right now where it is that in the past we've escaped reality because we were afraid. We escaped opportunities because we were insecure. We didn't believe in ourselves. We kind of avoided the opportunity to level up in a certain sense because it was overwhelming and we didn't know what to do with that energy. Pluto, of course, wants to illuminate for us a tough love life lesson where it is that we've allowed, fear and insecurities and our vulnerabilities to really block our blessings, but to also show us and illuminate for us the shadow parts within ourselves so that we can alchemize that into something more positive. Every single time that Pluto comes into play, he's the god of the underworld. So of course he's going to bring up negative thoughts, negative emotions, negative flashbacks when it comes to memories, really driving home why we shouldn't, why we couldn't, why we failed to advocate for ourselves, why we weren't able to stand in our own power, and why it was a better choice for us in past scenarios to give our power away. He does this in a tough love life lesson kind of method and way in order for us to kind of reach a breaking point where we can align to our intuition, which the moon in Pisces is all about, download a sense of strength from the cosmos because we are so highly sensitive and connected to the divine with the moon in Pisces, to recognize where it is that we can take our power back, where it is that we can stand in our power, face our fears, face our vulnerabilities, face our insecurities, and actually take control over our emotions, over our mental plane, and over the actions that we might have not taken in previous situations because of our own fears and insecurities blocking us. Because all these major heavy hitting planets are retrograde, we are going to have the opportunity to revisit some opportunities of the past that maybe we just weren't ready to tackle, we weren't ready to accept. There's going to be a lot of reflection happening with all the major heavy hitting planets now in a retrograde, and a lot of rewriting of the scripts that were fear-based, that were rooted in insecurities and vulnerabilities, and where it is that we can rewrite the script into something more powerful, where we feel like we have more control over our lives, where our lives aren't happening to us, they're happening for us. Things are going to get a little bit shaky though, and I'm not going to lie, we have to remember we're in a lunar hangover state, and the moon in Pisces, after that little hurrah with the Lord of Karma and with the god of the underworld, bumps into Chiron, the wounded healer. You best believe that things are going to get super sensitive, super intense, where we have the potential to lose ourselves in our emotions, in the shadow part of our emotions. But again, Chiron's whole purpose is to illuminate our wounds, especially where they've become a little bit too ingrained in our ego, in our identity, recognizing that we have made our pain and trauma part of our identity, where it is that we need to kind of detach from that, where it is that we have the power to heal those wounds by unleashing our inner spiritual warrior, and of course, making better decisions, better choices that are going to help honor our power instead of give it away. Now at this time, Venus, she takes over. She's in her place in power in Libra, as you know, really trying to reestablish balance in our lives, finding peace in our lives, finding harmony where, things have been a little bit cray-cray. Things have been hella disruptive, hella chaotic, and where it is that even though there is a little bit of crazy going on in our physical realities, it's up to us to find the peace, the center, the grounding point inside of ourselves so that our external worlds don't dictate how it is that we think and feel. Venus in Libra trines Saturn. Saturn is the Lord of Karma, and Venus being very rooted in relationships at this time, we are going to gain a little bit of stability in the relationships that have gotten out of whack. There's a little bit of a stronger footing taking place, and a lot of that is because we've been illuminated to certain emotions, certain perspectives under this full moon energy, and we've been able to communicate ourselves with a lot more confidence and a lot more clarity, really defining where it is that things have been unfair, where it is that we feel out of whack, out of balance, out of the loop, out of that connection. There is a huge learning lesson that is coming to us by really reflecting back on the relationships that we have deemed of value, where it is that maybe we let our ego get in the way in past conversations and past situations, and maybe where if we would have operated from our heart space, things wouldn't have gotten so messy and they wouldn't have gotten to the point where there was such space and disconnect in these relationships that we really desire a strong connection with. We become a little bit more practical in our expectations of other people. We recognize that we kind of had high expectations, and that high expectations only ever lead to disappointment. It is kind of like we have a new reality that we are stepping into, where we're testing new ways of communicating, new ways of interacting, new ways of expressing ourselves, new ways of advocating for ourselves to fight for a fair and balanced relationship and energy exchange with the people that we love. Now, although sounds very healing, and it is, the moon in Pisces is going to sextile, which is a good energy, with Uranus, who is now retrograde in Taurus. Now, this is a beautiful aspect, especially just following this Venus and Saturn aspect, because the moon in Pisces is very intuitive. We're able to have empathy. We're able to see other people's positions, thoughts, feelings from a different perspective. We're able to clearly define what it is that we're thinking, what it is that we're feeling, but we see other people's positions in a different light. And just because we have this opportunity to find a little bit of stable, fair ground in our relationships, this particular matchup between the moon in Pisces and Uranus is kind of like a shock to the system. We just shifted our perspective. We just had a huge awakening to where it is that we need to accept the roles and responsibilities that we have been playing in these quote unquote dysfunctional relationships, where it is that we allowed our ego to trump our spirit, and where it is that now that we are able to have empathy and kind of meet each other on stable ground, that this totally changes the game. We have to recognize that Uranus retrograde in Taurus is very focused on rebuilding, restructuring, re-strengthening our relationships, the value and the worth that we put on our relationships. And that is going to require us to act as the observer from the Uranian energy and see where it is that we have to adopt new ways of acting, new ways of expressing ourselves and communicating in order for us to all be on the same page. Venus is all hyped up at this point, and she goes ahead and bumps into Uranus as well. And she's almost excited. She's like, oh my goodness, I just had this awesome opportunity with Saturn earlier. We gained a whole lot of footing. I gained so much perspective and understanding where it is that I was being unrealistic with my expectations, where it is that, I was holding back my love. And of course that created a disconnect. We understood once we communicated that we both need to come together and try different ways of interacting and balancing the scales and doing what is right, voicing our opinions, our thoughts, our emotions on what it is that we need, and not just assume that the other person can read minds. Many of us get in situations where we literally assume that the other one knows what we're thinking, knows what we're feeling. And guess what assuming does? It makes an ass out of you and me. We get into a lot of trouble, especially in relationships of value, when we just assume that the other person knows where it is that we're coming from. And when we're not able to communicate with confidence and clarity, we don't even take the opportunity to clear the air until something bad happens, until we break down, forcing us to communicate in the way that we should have at the beginning. And of course, what happens? We have a breakthrough. So Venus and Uranus at this point, like Venus is all hyped up. She's super excited because this is a brand new reality. We're going to try something new. We're stabilizing. We're seeing huge amounts of growth. We're seeing huge amounts of progress. Finally, we feel certain about our relationships, about our emotional needs, about our worth, about our value. We feel heard. We feel validated. And Venus making this aspect with Uranus again being the great awakener, is just validating that, yep, we've just been exposed to a different way of thinking. We've just been exposed to a different way of communicating, acting, behaving. We just broke an old cycle by doing things differently. We busted out of the pattern, and now we can establish a brand new way of doing things. One thing I will throw at you though, is this Uranian energy always comes with a little bit of rebellion. We really want freedom. We really want independence anytime this Uranian energy is strong. And the fact that Venus in Libra is so attached to relationships, so attached to just other people's opinions and other people's perspectives, that this, although is exciting because we just made a huge amount of growth in our personal relationships by finding that new common ground, this could also illuminate us to where it is that, yep, we're excited. Yep, the connection is there. Yes, we're building new forms of communication and connection in our relationships, but also not to get too attached, where we still need to maintain our independence. We need to know where we end and they begin, where we need to have our own freedom, where we can't become so attached and ingrained in another person that we take on their identity. So we are kind of riding a good high here because we just kind of got illuminated to where things are changing in our personal relationships for the better, but we don't want to put all of our eggs in the same basket and recognize that they could steal our eggs at any time. We have to keep a couple of eggs for ourselves. We have to make things fair. We have to continue to honor our individual self while still being a part of a partnership and of a relationship. So the sun, who is just freshly in Virgo energy, and again, it is going to take us some time of adjustment to truly tap into the positive aspects of this Virgo energy, but the sun bumps into Pluto. Now, what I love about this is that the sun in Virgo, again, very analytical, very judgmental, very critical, because we want the details. We want to understand the inner workings of our mind, of our emotions, because of course that influences our behavior. And we recognize that we do not want things to continue the way that they've always gone, which means that we have to try new things. We have to open up new ways of communication, new ways of thinking, new ways of acting in order to get a different result. Why I love this is because Pluto, the god of the underworld, takes us into a deep, dark journey into the mind, into the psyche, into our heart space, into our soul space. It's almost like he's a tour guide and he says, okay, Sun in Virgo, you are definitely asking the right questions. You want all the information, you want the details, you want the big picture of why it is that we are the way that we are. Let me take you on a little tour of the darkest parts of ourselves, the darkest parts of our past pain, our past trauma, why it is that we have compartmentalized certain thoughts and feelings that we haven't been able to deal with in our conscious mind, and where it is that, you know what, the sun, who is all about shining a bright light on things, especially the darker parts of ourselves so that we can make sense of them, this Virgo energy is nothing but a problem solver. Anytime that there are blocks and challenges, the Virgo energy is going to come up with a solution. And it's going to be so detailed, so finite, so freaking strategic and calculated that it's going to work. Because this Virgo energy is also all about healing. So although this might feel a little bit uncomfortable, because of course, always when we dip into the darkest parts of ourselves, it's really never fun. But the sun in Virgo needs to explore the territory within us and examine those darker parts of ourselves, illuminate them to the light of the sun so we can bring them to the surface where the unconscious becomes conscious, where we can acknowledge them, accept them, reprocess them, rewrite them in a different way, and come up with a solution on how it is that we're going to turn this pain into power, how it is that we're going to turn this darkness into light. This is a very powerful moment of transformation, but of course, we have to be ready to face some of the not so nice parts that we have hidden deep and dark within us. The moon in Pisces sits across from Mars in Virgo. Of course, Piscean energy and Virgo energy are opposites. And the Virgo energy is the physical being, the physical body, the physical environment, ruled over by the mental plane, the lower mental plane, where Mercury, the ruler of Virgo energy, is all about the egoic identity of the lower intellect. The moon in Pisces is our emotions, it's our intuition, it's our unconscious self that we are trying to bring into conscious awareness. Why? Because we can do something with it at that particular time. I will say to you, this isn't the best aspect. This isn't going to make us feel very nice. It's not going to make us feel very light and fluffy. We have to understand we're still struggling with the full moon energies. We are in a lunar hangover pattern. So the moon in Pisces sitting across from Mars in Virgo, Mars, of course, wants to take action, wants to make things happen, is getting a little bit angry and frustrated and a little bit aggressive, not only in our communication, but in the narrative that we're actually having with ourselves. And especially just coming out of that sun in Virgo with the Pluto energy, that takes us into the darkness. And what do we find in the darkness? We find anger, we find frustration, we even find rage, we find restlessness, we find irritability. We don't want to deal with the depths of the analyzing that the sun in Virgo wants us to do right now, because of course the moon in Pisces just wants to escape all realities, escape all situations, to live in the light, fluffy daydream that we've created in our life that of course protects us from the trauma, from the pain that we face in our physical realms. So the moon in Pisces is kind of at odds with Mars in Virgo, and Mars wants to take action and make things happen and change the emotional landscape that we're currently sitting in. And the moon in Pisces just wants to escape altogether, doesn't want to take action, doesn't even want to be attached to our physical bodies, to our physical realms. This is when disassociation can happen. And sometimes, like I've been saying, sometimes when things get overwhelming in our physical lives, we have to disassociate in order to protect ourselves, in order to regain our balance and our strength to go ahead and tackle those darker parts of ourselves when we're feeling a little bit more willing and able. We also just have to understand that Mercury, the ruler of the mental plane, in his place of power in Virgo, is sitting so close to Mars at this particular point that we are definitely being fired up in our mental plane. There's a lot of aggressive thinking. There's a lot of aggressive processing going on. We are pushing the mental plane to our boundaries because we have a lot of questions. We are lacking a lot of information. You know, this Virgo energy wants to make a plan, but we can't make a plan until we're fully informed on what our choices are, what the details are, where it is that we have to kind of put a plan together in a logical and practical fashion. And as far as communicating goes, this is another kind of overflow from yesterday's energy. Mercury in Virgo is a very good communicator. We are in our most powerful, confident, times when Mercury is in its place of power in Virgo, but we're only speaking logical and practical elements right now. We're not so emotional, and that moon in Pisces is over emotional. We might actually find, especially where Mars is sitting so close to Mercury, opposing the moon in Pisces at this time, that we lash out, that we're so overwhelmed and that our physical realities won't let us disassociate and float away into imaginary land. We might be so frustrated, might be so overwhelmed that we open our mouth and verbal vomit comes out, and we might say some awful things. We might be projecting our own pain, our own fears, our own insecurities onto other people. We have the ability right now, because Mars is just so aggressive and so frustrated, to be very passionate about what it is that we're speaking about. However, if we lose our filter, which many of us do when this energy is so intense, we might end up speaking out of turn and causing a little bit more pain and trauma and hurt feelings than we ever wanted, ever really imagined that we would do. We kind of lose our footing there, and we just kind of open our mouth and all this energy comes out. So what I will say to you is to be very patient with yourself, is to be very kind to yourself, and to have a lot of understanding that everyone is going through their own inner hell right now. Everyone is being triggered because we are jumping into new realities, and new things come with a lot of uncertainty. And when we have uncertainty, and when we're undecided, and when we have all this pressure building up in our inner realms, you best believe that it can be manifested in all the negative Nancy ways that we've been trying to avoid. Things are definitely going to feel super overwhelming, like the volume is turned way too high on our emotions, on our thoughts, on the physical repercussions of the energy floating through our body at this time, and where everything is just a little bit much. If you can, I would definitely retreat from the day. I would definitely create a safe space for you to sort through all of these highs and all of these lows that come up without letting other people impact your day, and without other people being the punching bag for all of this frustration that will come to a head, will come to a boiling point, and will ask to be released.